Now, I personally have been enjoying Arc Raiders and still very much so do enjoy the game, but there's a few glaring issues with some items handled in game. And today is especially noticeable in the area that we're talking about that you may or may not have noticed as well. If you're a Trials hunter or you do them at all, you'll have noticed that today was the reset for this week's challenges. This week, we're tasked with delivering carryables, damaging ground-based Arc enemies, opening Arc probes, damaging Hornets, and finally, downloading information inside the bunker on Hidden Bunker, the spaceport major map condition that comes around every so often. All relatively standard things and all ones that we've seen before. Like, none of these are new, right? Well, yes, but there was one thing that may stand out to you that Hidden Bunker isn't as of recording this and wasn't earlier in the game. So how in the world are you supposed to do this trial? It wasn't on the rotation that we had today, and with an updated rotation still in the works as of recording this, what are you supposed to do? Well, I think that's a great starting point for a larger discussion on the current modifier rotations and how they've been and continue to be handled within Arc Raiders. So today we're taking a look at that. Drop your thoughts as we go along, drop a like if you guys enjoy the video. Make sure to subscribe for more Arc Raiders and other FPS content. I'd love to have you in the community. That said, let's get into it. So first thing, a little warning about this week's trials, at least today. One of them was of course not doable earlier in the day, and actually just for good measure, this video is a bit later in the evening because I got curious. Any and all of these trackers that have these sort of timers for countdowns to when an event expires or when the next one is upcoming, all of them had the same sort of, oh, there's nothing past 7 p.m. And surely I was like, okay, it's an API glitch or something like that. But then, well, the daily refresh happened and yeah, there's actually not any modifiers or map conditions in the game as of recording this, 7 p.m. Eastern, this little segment here. Now, I'm not sure how long that will last. Maybe this is intentional, gearing up for something else in the coming days here. Maybe it's a weird glitch with the refresh system, but the point still remained. With the introduction of the trial requiring players to take part in the Hidden Bunker event, it wasn't possible to advance that trial. A big picture, maybe not the biggest problem, because almost certainly we're going to see that added in the next 12 to 24 hours probably, and we see the next 5.5, 6 days total of the week on the trials that you can work towards that. But either way, still not exactly fair for all players if they missed that. But also, even when it's in the rotation, the problem's actually still kind of there. What I mean by this is the Hidden Bunker as a whole. As the time of recording this, it's previously been on rotation only 2 times a day when it's in that rotation, happening not on a perfect distribution or rotation, but a rotation of morning and late night when you'd see it. So while it will differ depending on where you live, the last time I had seen this when it was available last was 3 a.m. and 11 a.m. only. Now, for most people, like, you're either sleeping at that point or you're at work more than likely, unless it's the weekend and you got nothing to do here and it's on that rotation. So if you're someone that's grinding out trials and want to do them in any capacity, or perhaps you're like me and you just kind of start going on one and then you see one that's empty and it kind of bothers you, but whatever your reasoning, it is a severely limited map modifier that has a trial based explicitly on it. And it's one that's been like that for a little bit now. Every time we've seen this, I think this might be the third time we've seen this trial, it's had the same sort of issue where it's a very limited run map event, but you still have a trial based on it. Thankfully, we've only seen this one trial that's become problematic, as the other condition-specific trial we had was in relation to the Cold Snap, which was on a steady rotation when that was around. But this, not the best look. And with the upcoming Toxic Swamp event that we've seen leaked now for quite some time, where that will be an additional map condition to the rotation, there is a trial that's associated with that as well. So we don't know the frequency at which that will be introduced, and in that rotation, whether it's something as frequent as the Cold Snap or as limited as Bird City, 2 very different ends of the spectrum on how it could go about. So it could be another one that in the future is problematic, which, speaking of, another prime example of this uneven distribution of map conditions that you'd think are important is Bird City, because this was the focal point of the new update for Arc Raiders and the Headwinds content, offering up a new way to loot on the rooftops of Buried City, bringing with it a handful of new ducks, and frankly, a very easy way to make an absolute killing in terms of coins depending on what type of lobby you had, whether or not it's a PvE lobby, you get lucky with all those different chimneys that you can loot up and you get a ton of ducks, or maybe you kill somebody that has a ton of those ducks. Basically, it's just a way that you can exponentially increase your yield per raid based off of those ducks in the chimneys. So it's a nice sort of like trinket run modifier, which I get is why you might want to keep it not as abundant as a night raid, but like the problem with this condition is it was only available 3 times a day as a brand new map condition that was one of your main focal points of the update. It was on a rotation of every 8 hours, and previously that was 11 a.m., 7 p.m., and 3 a.m. Eastern, and elsewhere in the world comparatively, depending on your own time zone. So in that context, the brand new map condition, again, with higher tier loot, things that a lot of players are going to want to check out, the first time you'd see it during the day is when most people are at work. The second time is when you're maybe at home, but also you could be with your family, you could be eating dinner, taking yourself or the kids, or doing something for an event or activity. And the third time of the day would be more than likely when you're asleep, gearing up for the next day and the grind ahead again. So for the average person, how often are you going to get to play Bird City? How often are you going to be able to check out those new loot locations, the new loot that comes along with it? Hell, even for me, someone whose job it is to talk about games and cover them, I've only been able to play it like twice, maybe 3 times the way my schedule has been working out lately. So when so many players cannot experience that brand new map condition and one of those focal points of the event, it's quite a bummer and probably an indicator that we might need to see some adjustment to how these systems work. Right? Well, unfortunately, that might be easier said than done, because when you take a look at how many different map conditions we have, there's actually a lot for only the 5 maps that we have on rotation. And without inundating players with a ton of different options for what you can play, 5 different maps, a couple of different map conditions in there, it's something that you don't want to break up that player base too much. Like, that's probably the perspective of where Embark is taking this. But at the same time, they seem kind of like mismatched, I feel like, in the importance of some of the higher frequency versus lower frequency ones. So I think the only way that you'd be able to do this is an entire rework of how the rollout system is either weighted or how it happens. Like, I would think your major and standard modifiers, they can stay relatively high and active, like a Night Raid, Harvester, Matriarch, those being your most frequent ones, maybe Electromagnetic Storm in there, kind of the bridge between middle and like high priority ones. But those Night Raids, Harvesters, Matriarchs, those are the ones you're always going to see most often. So maybe have one of those always on rotation here, but then you start to sprinkle in trial specific or limited time ones, buffing the sort of amount that you'll see them for things like Hidden Bunker, because this week in particular, it's pretty crucial to end up getting the opportunity to play that if you are a trial hunter. Otherwise, you are at a severe disadvantage because you only have 4 of the 5 available to really grind out. So things like your Hidden Bunker, Bird City as a new focal point and that content offering, Locked Gate, again, maybe Electromagnetic Storm in there. You buff the amount that you see those where they're not happening just twice or 3 times a day. Maybe they happen 4 or 5, maybe 6, once every couple of hours, but not something that is over inundated. And then you can have your lesser important items like your Lush Blooms, Uncovered Caches, Prospecting Probes, Husk Graveyard, Launch Tower Loot for Spaceport. Those to me are all more minor map conditions that don't necessarily need to be in your face 24/7, but they're nice when you come around them. Whereas other things, the gameplay loop is kind of predicated on that in recent times. Again, things like trials or new content additions that are focal points. So I think that while on one side of the coin, it's a relatively easy fix just redistributing the sort of weight to these, it's also something that, again, is easier said than done because you are adjusting so many of these different map modifications all at one time. So I guess we'll have to wait and see how this all works out, but again, for the time being, I think these could definitely use a little bit of rework. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Maybe this is a hot take and I'm just way out of my element and I'm not making any sense. Honestly, quite possible. But want to fill you guys in so that you know about this current trial situation this week, but also have a casual discussion here about maybe the future of how we see these map conditions take shape. Would you guys like to see them adjusted in any way, shape, or form? Would you like to see some more than others? Would you like to see a relative rebalancing of them? Let me know. But if you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. Of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so don't miss a single thing regarding all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Ben Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.